challenges for research and development. So in Horizon 2020 in the year 2020. As said, IoT adoption is maturing. We spend a lot of time and effort to work with verticals to see, what are the burning issues, what are the bottlenecks, what are the sort of, to have standards across the board in order to accelerate the adoption and upscaling. We see that European IT spending is increasing. It's all triggered from the consumer part still, but we see also more from industrial parts buying in from industrial companies, from farming, from smart cities, from transport, and trying to reflect not only on their own state, but also on business models which are data-driven, which involve sort of connectivity. More and more services from the objects and devices the data to the cloud, so you have all the flexibility in the cloud, but there are also more federated approaches coming up. We see that the value of the data is increasing. If you talk about real-time data, you may have followed the discussion on 5G and its value proposition for verticals like farming, for energy, for connected mobility, which is sort of holding the promise that they deliver low latency, they deliver real time, and they deliver a lot of availability. So what are the research and development drivers for the next generation of internet? As said, one core will be about real-time applications. We think about how do the value proposition from the IoT industry on the one hand and the mobile industrial network operators on the other, and how do they merge, how do they converge, what is the joint initiative? We have to talk about data-centric and secure architectures, because if you spread the data around, you have this leakage, you have a lot of breaches in terms of security. And you heard it this morning in the opening already. It's a lot about data analytics, AI, getting quicker to decision support, to knowledge, to understand what's going on, and a lot of value is expected to come from the edge. So moving again to the point of interest, having computing intelligence at the edge, which comes from the backend, so not putting all the data to the backend. And you have heard it this morning, edge computing could be one of the triggers for innovation in the future. And then augmented reality and tactile interfaces as one further comment. If you look at from the classes of Internet of Things, yes, we have a more and more complex infrastructure. So also the devices will change. We have thousands of connected or millions of connected objects. And still, we've heard it from Liberium in the morning, it's still a major challenge for companies to distill that one in an ecosystem, to have sort of a value proposition across different supply chain providers. We have a more diverse topology of networks, so 5G is coming in. We maybe have mesh networks more than just device cloud. I mentioned the important role of analytics, including AI and edge cloud analytics. So where do I take the decision? Where do I do the processing of information? And we have to leverage the key technologies, 5G, edge, and distributed AI. So many of the discussion goes back to a report from Gartner, who talks about the next generation of IoT with the 3 levels. You see the more meshed up topology at the infrastructure level, so meshed apps and service infrastructure, the role of social media, conversational systems, the driving technology platforms, including AI and big data value, and the burning issue of security. The second layer where I see is, where is a new value proposition coming on from new ecosystems. One is quite prominent from the Industry 4.0, the idea of a digital twin, which may become more prominent in the future for the interaction with the real world systems. Not just to having simulation in the back, but also to have triggered by events and reacting to real-time events. Virtual reality and augmented reality to support consumers and users in their decision and in the interaction with the digital world. And of course, blockchain distributed ledger to focus on federated architecture, a value proposition for trust, to go away from a central to more federated and shared infrastructures. On top of that changing environment for the digital infrastructure, you will have a value proposition in terms of artificial intelligence, intelligent apps going for your health data, going for your movement, going for your mobility needs, looking a bit what's going on in your context, and which then have the experience of the user, that the things becoming more context aware, intelligence, and at the service of the user. So said that, we try to cluster the complexity of the research domain in four main areas. One is it's an evergreen, it's ever burning. It talks about interoperability. We know that already from the current clusters, but here it's focused again, with prime focus on security, on the future value proposition and involvement of technologies, technology platforms, and particularly, to move from device cloud to more federated architecture. So how do the future architectures look like to take benefit from these trends? Coping with a vast number of heterogeneous devices, and fostering data exchange, privacy, data monetization, and contractual arrangements. So again, it's part of the idea of a human-centered IoT. Yes, the complexity of the internet world is definitely increasing. I mentioned already, we have more information through social media. We have more integrated information about wristbands in all the environment, and sensors in the environment, and perception of the systems. We discuss about central and federated architectures, which should take into account and adopt the advances in machine learning, AI, and helps not only to be a risk for the user, but also to be for benefit of the user. So to have a more dynamic deterrent. So how to cope with the future security, privacy risk in light of more personal data extracted from ordinary data as well, and how does the user then is able to manage a data infrastructure for trust, privacy, and security. Good. Second part, the third part, the second part was on architectures, which look on the one hand increase security and trust, but built on a more decentralized architecture, keeping the data at the edges, which also facilitates a bit the security management, but also including artificial intelligence and machine learning algorithms at the level of the edge in order to preserve the user needs and the needs for the apps. After interoperability and architectures, the third area would be new hardware technologies. We see emerging technologies also in terms of sensors, actuators, but also computing, neuromorphic computing, mimicking AI applications, machine learning, quantum computing, AI on the chip level. So all what is around more than more. We want to see, to build on advances from what we call the Excel PPP, and to see how that influences then the future generation of IoT devices. So in the picture again, we move from current generation of devices to the next generation of IoT devices to exploit advances in micro nano biotechnologies, building on resource-aware computing and exploit the cloud continuum from the devices to the edge towards the backend system. Again, here, strong focus on the infrastructure evolution, preserving security, building on the advances in technology platforms, and also enabling a future more distributed and meshed infrastructure. Good. Final, but not the least one, we talk about the tactile internet. What is that? The new buzzword. If you look in the past of a car, it was pure mechanical. So the product stayed as it is, as it was built forever. There was no changed functionality. There's no sort of risk management for that one apart from parts falling apart. And today we have this software functions, software over the air. So the functionality and the services are defined via the software, which creates a challenge, particularly also for the system management. The 5G vision is, that the object through the mobile network and the edge cloud is continuously interacting with the environment. That could be a use case, in a smart city where the autonomous car can look around the corner. So it gets an alert when there's a critical situation, an accident around the corner, which it cannot see. But it could be also linked to the context. You go to the mountains, you go for some serpentines, and you get a different configuration of the car to be adapted to sort of the mountains, the mountain riding, going up quickly and depending on your personal style. So you see the functionality is defined on the context, on the user, and on the perception of the infrastructure. So we have to see what is the role in the future of the edge, who will provide it, which is the ecosystem around it, what is the connectivity and the control of the car itself. You need a shield to filter the information, to have sort of a trustful information, and the quality of service around with the infrastructure. So a lot of this is a bit still in the cloud, not really defined. There's a lot of expectations coming up, but it will be certainly part of the research and development discussion. So the future application of textile and contextual internet will build on what's happening in the cloud, a digital twin, who knows the context, who mimics the context, who could adapt functions and functionality of the system, how you will manage security between the two-layered approach, edge, or the three-layered cloud, edge, and device, and to what extent virtual reality and augmented reality mechanisms will enhance the perception of the user and give him the trust. So quite widely unexplored for that point in time. And that brings me to the broader vision, which is then given by Peter, to how that is then linked to the future sort of projects we are running at the moment and the plans.
Okay, so from the context presented by Rolf, I'll try to sort of distill it down in what a work program could look like, given the fact that we still don't have an approved work program, so all these things can, of course, still change. But we thought it was a good opportunity to have an early hands up in the fact this call will open during the summer and will close not too far away, so we want to take this opportunity to already flag it up. So as you know, we have proposed for the next framework program what's called Next Generation Internet as the placeholder for 5G, cloud, NGI, and IoT. So we want this call to be a kind of a precursor for enabling the future directions already from a set of research and innovation projects. So as Ralph said, this will be focused really on developing new concepts, new ideas, and validating them on a small scale. So it's a way of also mobilizing new research communities, because you've seen from Ralph's presentation, we need to bring in a lot of different players into these projects. It's not just IoT or cloud or 5G, or it really requires a lot more cross collaboration. So basically the NGI for the next framework program was proposed as a kind of a new kind of service infrastructure combining 5G, IoT, and cloud for creating this kind of new application infrastructures. We need to do the kind of things that Rolf presented, where we need a much more intimate relationship between the communication infrastructure, the data capturing infrastructure, processing infrastructure, and the feedback to decisions. Especially we want to go down from 100 millisecond to 1 millisecond end-to-end time. This requires a totally new way of structuring both the software and hardware components to be able to do that, combined with integrating ledgers and security. So that's why we're proposing really a kind of a new, what we call a connectivity and service infrastructure, which really cuts across what we know today as the telecoms, and the IT and the service providers will have to come much closer together also in terms of the industries behind. So that's also why we're proposing a partnership in Horizon for that, because we really need new value chains to really work together, in particular if we want to compete with big American companies or Chinese competitors. We need to, in Europe, to have something of a similar nature. Then we also have a component which is really the human-centric thing, which really builds on the idea of having this values and human-centric approaches like the GDPR or the guidelines for AI, so at the center of the things we do. We also are looking at other things like language independence, a lot of other features that currently hampers Europe when we look at a multicultural society, but where technology can be deployed much more effectively to have multilingual searches or multilingual interactions as a way of scaling up in Europe while still retaining our cultural identity. Then we're also looking at distributed processing and data analytics, embedding artificial intelligence, because as well said, AI is not something that happens somewhere in a box, somewhere in a corner. It actually has to be implemented in a very distributed way when we want to use it for different purposes. So therefore also how we embed effectively AI and machine learning into this kind of thing require totally new approaches that are very different from the number crunching backend. This will still happen, but we also need to have distributed layered variants of that, so we are not sending full native streaming data all the way back, so you will already have to do feature extraction very close to the source where you may apply algorithms already at that stage and so on. So it requires really new architectural concept, and as said, for real-time applications, we cannot just put 20 different software stacks on top of each other. This will not work, so we really need basically new foundational approaches to the way we build software that will be quite different from what we're doing today. The other thing as well mentioned, the idea of instead of having the client-server model in the future, you may have much more peer-to-peer networks that also require very different ways in the way we address protocols and really structure the thing. So we're really looking for some really new foundational work to come up with some new ideas for our call as well. I think this is more or less repeating what Rolf is saying. Just want to also say we have this ngiot action which has already been collecting your input for the roadmap. So this is not preempting what's coming out there, because this will be for Horizon 2020 call. We're of course aiming to put this into a major say roadmap for what we want to do under the next MFF, but we're already creating a first level of mini call to implement some of these ideas already. It's also, of course, building on the work we're doing with the IoTi, the industry, which already have given input on things. So we need also to, in this process, to bring the value chains with us, so we also can make sure we have the right actors in place. But we do think this shift to edge computing distributed architectures is an opportunity for Europe to recapture a bit the access to the markets and new products and services, where we can leverage on Europe's say competences in distributed systems and so on, which we can use to reinvent ourselves a bit. So let's see. So if we come down to this goal, of course all this is still provisional information, but we intended to put around 46 million out for such a call, which really will address a set of specific challenges, and the idea is it has to tackle all of those challenges. So we want proposals that really brings these challenges together in an application context. So it's not theoretical research. We want to have projects that actually can illustrate and demonstrate across those elements of new architectures like the real-time or the mesh type architectures in its use case setting, what can be done. We want to have this idea, we want to have tactile internet, like for example human-robot interaction. You need very, very precise, if you want to have workable interaction working together with a robot or other devices, you need really low latency and so on, because otherwise it will not work. We want to make sure we can also see what are the progression in terms of interoperability from where we are now, including also integrating ledger technologies when you want to do, say, distributed authorization systems, or say other types of contractual arrangement that can be enabled, for example, for large-scale data sharing and other things that are important. And then also looking at some of the new types of IoT devices, so the really new types of smart devices as well. So the idea is to really look for some use cases that require those things, can demonstrate why you need new architecture, and then come up with some new conceptual proposals for how to solve those problems and demonstrate them on a smaller scale. So these are proof of concept kind of projects. It's not large scale pilots, but we want to see the use cases that really need those kind of things. So it's not a theoretical exercise. It actually is already building on what are the kind of elements that will be needed and why, and also building on, for example, existing 5G infrastructures that might be available, so you actually have realistic, it's not just a pure lab exercise as well also. So this is kind of the concept for the call. We want, of course, to see users at the center as well, also to demonstrate how these new concepts can help to progress this human-centric approach. We want to give an outline to see where lacking standards and issues that will be important. It's not expect these proposals will necessarily solve those things, but they should illustrate important areas. If we want to go down this route, where are the gaps where we need to now mobilize when we go into the next framework program? We will already have a good starting point to see who we need to mobilize. So this call is also really to mobilize the constituencies to be ready for the major changes that will happen when we go into Horizon Europe and the Digital Europe programs. And also we want us to already have a look at the business models, because we know you really have to, especially when you make these disruptive things, you also have to already have a perspective on what are the implications when you look at the usual traditional stakeholders and the changes this will bring about. So this is also an important element of such a call. Then in addition to these research and innovation action, we will also propose a new coordination and support action, which will kind of take over and progress things, so we have a good overlap when we go into the Horizon Europe. We will have some things that can pick up from the current CSAs we have now. The NGI IoT can help to pick up the results and provide continuity in terms of moving into the research world, and also the usual kind of thing in mobilizing the stakeholders. So this is, we think, is necessary to do that. So we will have continuously some infrastructure that can help to work together with the projects when we move forward. Then in addition, which we're not presenting, there will also be a call coming later, so this will not be coming very early, so we will not present this today, but there will be a further set of large-scale pilots completing the focus area that we have in the digital server platform for rural economies, which is extending from the agriculture into really the rural economy, and the way that digital can help to mobilize that. And there will also be a call from our colleagues in Luxembourg on smart hospitals and robotics and so on, which is follow-up. So there will be more information about those, of course, and there will be info days. There will be an info day in Helsinki in October for that, but we just felt this would coming very late in terms of this call, which will close towards the end of the autumn. So therefore we wanted to do an early trigger from this. As soon as the work program is formalized, of course, we will make this available, which should happen, I think, within the next months, or certainly before the summer, when the member states have approved it. Yes, I think this was more or less what we had in mind. So it's an intercept for the strategy in Horizon Europe. We want to already anticipate things like having a partnership on the infrastructure, to have this close relationship with the new micro, nano, embedded systems work and software work, and then transferring that in the IoT context, so we can really prepare the ground as much as possible when we plug into the next big policy. And also we hopefully will at that point in time have a policy framework that will continue the digitized European industry under a new commission, but we will have to wait for that until we have a new commission. Obviously, we've been working with DG Grow on this idea of strategic value chains for industrial IoT, to see what are the situations for Europe here, what are the options we can do. Do we need a European cloud infrastructure, for example, or are we happy to see the situation we have now? So there are a lot of inputs for future policy, but at this point in time, of course, we wait for a new incoming Commission to decide where they want to focus, and then we will see. But I think one thing we can say that for the next period there will be a stronger relationship between big policy lines and the way we use the research program. So there will be a much tighter linkage and hopefully also much tighter reinforcement of creating the right investment environment. For example, if we want to have a European cloud, could be mobilized some public investments to support the investment that would have to be done and so on. So a lot of possible policy connections that we will be exploring, as well as also the regulatory framework for regulating industrial internet use versus or machine-to-machine internet use versus the normal service use of the internet, where the current regulatory framework is basically mainly focusing on the traditional consumer type things. So there are a lot of issues that we will be looking into in the next step that will accompany these kind of things. So I think this was more or less what we had in mind. I don't know, Ralph, you want to say anything else? Or?
Yeah, I think basically it's an early application, as Peter mentioned, to see a bit, where do you see main questions around that, on the level of understanding, what your expectations as well, but also maybe we also missed something important, or we are too ambitious.
Just technology readiness level, see that mentioned?
Yeah, I think we're aiming for proof of concept. So I think if you want to do those kind of things, we can't expect a fully finished thing. So really, it's a proof of concept, but we want it still to be an application context. So it's not a purely theoretical idea of new theoretical ideas for new architecture. So it is to have some good demonstrators, but on a proof of concept level, which can be whatever. Some of you can be more ambitious, or others you may not be able to be so ambitious, but that should be so you can demonstrate why you need these things, why they add value, why they are needed. So this is a bit we want to show early on. What are the kind of things, if you want to have autonomous cars really working, what are the kind of things you cannot do today that you need something new, or you want to have real-time capable applications that really can work, what are the kind of things you need to have in place. So if you want to have distributed AI integrated into a real situation that can be made available, what are the types of applications that could demonstrate what that would mean, and so on. So I think that's the idea of the call, but as usual, I think you'll find the call quite flexible in terms of the scope, so it'll be really up to the proposers to come forward with what it is that they think would make this work, and also what are the components that you, of course we don't expect the project to do 100% on every single aspect of that, but we want to have an element of all of these in the proposals to demonstrate a bit the wide scope of such new systems. What are the new things that don't exist today that we want to demonstrate what it could be.
Yeah, basically I think when you need, because there's quite a complexity of technology scope we've given, that's why you need sort of, you link it to some applications, you need good storytelling in the proposal, that people understand, what is it for, where you want to integrate, where you want to do research on new technology, or foundational new architectures and concepts. At the same time, you have to bear in mind, that if something happens, from here to the call and then until the project starts, what is the main trigger on the market? So what is sort of technology innovation, what breakthroughs are at the horizon, which could be further developed and then applied to some application context. And all these proposals will have sort of a range of 5 to 8 million euro funding, with a flexible component again, so with a possibility for open calls. So at the end of the day, you see in the link to standardization, we want you to think also about, what are the open APIs, what are sort of emerging standards which could be tested and accelerated by smaller companies who are on the market already. So there's also a market transfer component inside. We have cascading funds. Yeah.
You touched on my question there at the end there. You've stressed the importance of interoperability, but do you see the importance of standards as increasing or decreasing, or will they just be a different role for them?
I think the interoperability, as you recall it, was a link to, for instance, to the blockchain, to distributed architectures. We see two problems there. First of all, yes, we have to see to what extent the landscape of existing and emerging standards is fit for purpose, could be reused, And then is the question of if you have this distributed federated architecture, about the governance of that. So it's quite close to the application. We don't expect a major contribution to the standards, but eventually either depicting the path to the market to make a contribution, or to highlighting what are the gaps, or where can we use existing standards.
Yeah, I said this is a kind of precursor. Ideally, we will want these projects to early on see it as a very important area where, if we want to lead in the world, this is where we should now focus on really trying to mobilize. So obviously these projects by themselves will not be standards making by their nature, but they should really as Rob say, see where can we leverage on emerging standards that are already in the making, or where are big gaps that we cannot solve, but we can flag them up so we can help to provide input for mobilizing important standardization activities that would be interesting then to pick up in the Horizon Europe. Once the first call would start, you could immediately already start on a very informed basis. So there's a bit idea to have an early reflection on these type of projects to help inform the way we could formulate the future when we go into larger exercise, or for the partnership, or whatever would be the kind of things that would emerge.
But we've seen there are already some competing messages in the presentation. On the one hand, you talk about mesh and distributed architectures, which eventually could be supported by blockchain and distributed ledger technologies. And on the other hand, we talk about 5G and narrowband IoT, which is pure central again, central management. So we have to see which of the paradigms will prevail, which are more, which are getting closer to the value proposition for potential applications, or where we have industrial consortia like the for compute industrial internet, or the Thread Alliance, or how does the Alliance of IoTI position themselves in light of the future challenges. So there's not one single solution. That's why we go for several proposals, and we try to see. We hope to get a good balance between the more mobile-driven, network-driven services and applications, and the more bottom-up meshed networks.
Is there likely to be any support in the sense of use case, value proposition analysis? Because I understand these are for SMEs, a lot of it would be involving SMEs, and should be fairly short term. And the large-scale pilots had a lot of time to develop use cases and what worked, what didn't. But these ones seem to be more near-term. No, not really.
No,
okay, so
we talk about research and development more. It's a bit more mid-term, longer-term.
Okay, then.
If you look at the EPI class, the European Platform Initiative, which was quite heavily industry-driven, or no, research-driven, not research-driven. But then, with a clear hook in order to have an exploitable interface and API at the end. Not directly into standardization, but at least we have that vision. What are the services who go fast to the market, and what are things and developments which take more time to bring into the market. So that's why we need the CSA in order to make that distinction. Where we have pure research topics which are dealt with in the proposals, and which are topics which could be accelerated by current market developments and applications, and what are the needs in order to open up the APIs and testing that one on in the market.
Okay.
Any further questions?
So there will be obviously more information, and there will also be formal info days, but they may come quite late after the summer, in fact, so that's why we gave this quick opportunity now, and then also we will make information available about the call whenever it's formally open for dissemination. Yes. Anything? Then I think we want to give the opportunity to Jorge just to announce the opportunities under the other NGI, the cascading calls that they have there as well.
Proposals Day is 18th of September.
18th
Helsinki.
September.
18th and 19th of September.
Yeah.
Helsinki.
Yeah. That will be the big official proposals day for the work program 2020.
Okay. I'm Jorge Gasos, also working in the European Commission, same directorate, but in a different unit in the one of Next Generation Internet. So I'm going to explain you a little bit what we are doing very quickly, and also what are the opportunities for the area, I mean those of you who are interested in the IoT area, and also how our activities complement the activities that they are doing and that they have just been presented. So in our case, we are focusing in the part of services and applications, and we are taking a horizontal approach to try to promote innovators to participate in the program. That is an area where we are not getting, there is a lot of advancements in the area of internet, and we are not getting so many of them engaged in our calls because of all these problems with a little bit administrative problems, etc. So in our case, for example, what they have explained, they are following a more roadmap approach where they are identifying the key areas where they want to advance. So for example, they are talking about edge computing, tactile internet, etc. So they are focusing on what are going to be the main topics in this area in the coming years. In our case, we are following a different approach. We are taking issues like privacy in the internet. Independently, if we are talking about IoT or if we are talking about different things, we are making calls about distributed data governance, or decentralized data governance. We are talking about e-identities. We have calls on blockchain, etc. So we are talking more about a more horizontal approach, but of course, and we are looking for people, innovators in these areas. This can be high-tech startups, this can be individual developers, this can be individual researchers who have an idea, have been working in this area, and want to work with small grants in order to further this idea and try to bring it up to the market. So we are talking about small grants. So the grants we are provided are between 5,000 euros up to 200,000 euros. And we are talking about short research cycles, so normally these are between 9 and 12 months, and with a purpose to try, I mean, not necessarily to come directly to the market, but start to becoming closer to the market in the wide sense. For example, there are some developers that is not that they are going to sell the product, but they have approaches that they can then be taken up into open source software or protocols, etc., etc. So we are talking market in a very wide sense. And then, so we are launching these calls. So there are a number of opportunities. In this moment, we have 4 running projects from the last call, and they are focusing on the areas of privacy, decentralized data governance, and search. So in these areas, we are not covering exclusively IoT, but there are opportunities for those people in IoT who are working in this area and want to contribute. We are opening new calls. I mean, we are just selecting them in this moment. We have a call recently, and we are going to launch new projects by the end of this year, who will then start launching their calls for innovators beginning of next year. So we are going to have a critical mass within this year, next year, and the following one of initiatives of open calls where there will be plenty of opportunities to contribute. So these calls are complementary and different from the ones that they have been presented in this moment. We are targeting different topics and a different kind of approach to the research. If you are interested, there are 2 things. One is the ngiot.eu website, where we are making public all the information, all the calls, and all the activities that we are having. So this is the main entry point for all the information. And then if you take a look, and if you are interested, we are going to have a major event in September in Helsinki, the NGI forum, where the community is going to meet, and then it will be, for those of you who are interested in getting engaged in this initiative, it could be a good moment to meet the people, get more detailed information about what we are doing and what we are going to be the next goals. So if you're interested, you are welcome to get in touch with us and to follow up these activities. Thank you.
Okay, then I think Monique also will say a few words about the NGIoT information points that might be of interest to you.
So I'm wearing now the NGIoT hat. I just wanted to. No, I think it's good. So good afternoon, everybody. For who doesn't know me, my name is Monique Calisti, and I'm involved in the Next Generation Internet of Things project that is working together with the Commission on helping the community to grow together and identify research challenges and opportunities. We're here to listen to you and to shape also the future directions for research and innovation initiatives. So there are several opportunities here in Aarhus. You can come and visit the booths. There is one booth where several projects together with Create IoT and User for IoT, we are sharing a space in front of the main room. Then in the exhibition area, we have a stand where you can come and talk to us. There is an ongoing, let's say, discussion online survey that we have launched. We will discuss some of the results in the plenary room, I think, on Thursday morning. Can't remember, I think 11:30 or 1:30, but stay tuned on the program. The agenda, you have it on your mobile phones. One last thing I wanted to say is that also connecting to what George, where is George? Ah, he's there. Mentioned, I don't have glasses. Mentioned before, there is some ongoing open calls. Now you can find the details at the ngi.eu website. There are several ongoing, continuously open. So these are funding opportunities that are currently available. Of course, whenever we will have new information that will be officially released, I guess, in September, by the time of ICT 2019 Proposals Day, we will publish it both on the ngiot.eu and on the ngi.eu websites. Other than that, I would like to give an appointment to the community in Helsinki in the first weeks of the Finnish presidency. There will be the ICT Proposals Days on the 18th and 19th of September, but 1 week later, there is the My Data Conference, and the first day it's gonna be on the 25th of September, the Next Generation Internet Forum. And we will discuss many of the topics that were mentioned in the presentation before by Rolf. We will have very much a focus on data, data sovereignty, data privacy, and data governance. So topics that are indeed relevant across a number of research communities. So I hope to see several of you there. I hope I didn't forget anything. Feel free to ask me anytime. Thank you.
Good. What else to say? I think you've seen there's a strong focus on small companies, startups. So what makes them to engage with the Commission? I think it's a value proposition. We try to do it under the umbrella of NGI in different contexts, but you also have to give them a value that you see with the hackathon here, with the pitches. So it's a bit of a new paradigm we try to explore, we try to go, because there's a lot of sort of, what could I say, a momentum on the market at the moment. And we try to engage with them, you know, and convince them there's an added value to engage in European projects. We try to lower the barrier via this cascading funds and open calls. So if you're connected to these ecosystems, spread the news. I think it's could be a win-win, because we've seen that many of the startups with the value proposition, they have to find customers in the first place, and then they think about open standards, data standards, or open interfaces. And maybe it's good to have that open conceptual approach to scale later and at the very first place, and we want to support the networking as well. Good. If there are no further questions, thank you for the attendance, for your interest, and please stay tuned. Thank you. Thanks.